Hi everyone. Let's talk a little bit about your doodle assignment. Especially for those of you who might have been absent, this is important information. You should already have gotten your drawing pencils and your drawing paper, all your art supplies from the campus MA. But if you haven't, you can still work using your own materials. Instead of using drawing paper like I've got here, you could use printer paper. Printer paper is a little smaller than the drawing paper, but it can still work for you for this project. And also use like a number 2 regular school type pencil or a mechanical pencil if you don't have a pencil of your own. Now eventually we're going to be having the option of putting Sharpie pen into it or color pencil into it, but I recommend that you start with pencil, and then you can kind of put things where you want them to be, and then you can be more precise with color pencil or with Sharpie, or being more precise with your pencil that you're using, whether it's this or one of the school pencils. I want to talk to you a little quickly about the school pencils. There's a little area right here that's silver part of it. I think you can see it, and it has a label on it. As you rotate it around, this says it's a 3B pencil. It's a 3B. That means it's a soft pencil. The B ranges are soft pencils, and they make dark marks really easily and thick marks really easily, and they're smudgeable. The H pencils are hard leads, and they make a light mark and a thin mark more easily than the B's do. I would start with a pencil that's in the middle. I would use an HB pencil. Instead of the 3B, I would start with the HB. So you just look at the different labels on the end of your pencil to figure out which is which. Those are the school pencil, or the art kit pencils that I supplied with you. If you're using one like this, it's got a label right here in the body of it that says it's a 2. It's a number 2 pencil, which means it's about the same as an HB pencil. It's not a 1 and it's not a 5. So I want to talk to you about your paper real quick, but before we get to this paper, I want to just mention this. You should already have gotten your packet of paper too, along with your drawing pencil kit. So if you haven't gotten those, remember I've already mentioned it, but for this project, if you've got them, you're going to use this size paper, not the big one and not the little one. You're going to use the middle size paper of the drawing paper. Do not use the papers that have that clip on them. That is watercolor paper. It's for this, and we're not going to use it until later in the quarter. All right? So don't use it yet. When you take your paper, put it on a hard surface, like I've got a drawing board to put it on. And the next step is, with your HB pencil, you're going to draw a border on the paper that's 1 inch wide. So let's talk about doing that. You can see I already did it with one of my classes. So I'm going to continue it with you. I'm going to use I'm going to use a darker pencil so you can see it, but you should use your HB or your number 2 pencil to do this. This is the ruler that I want you to use, is the one that came with it, but you can use one that you might already have. 0 is right here. It's this long mark closest to the edge of the wood. It's this really long mark. That's 0, and you use that to start your measurement. And then for 1 inch, it's this long line right here that's next to the number 1. So it's this long line to the right of number 1 is a 1 inch measurement. So here's how you measure. You put the 0 mark along the edge of the paper, and you make a mark just above the mark that's for 1 inch, not the 1 inch measurement. I'm sorry, not the number 1, but the measurement for 1 inch, right? So just a light mark vertically that way, and then you do it near the bottom too. You need 2 marks to make sure your line goes straight. So you've got 2 marks that are 1 inch from the edge here. Then to make a line that's parallel to that edge, you move your ruler vertically, and you line up the top dot and the bottom dot, and you draw your line in. Don't draw too hard, because you're going to need to do some erasing of some of the parts of the line. So once you've got one edge drawn in place, rotate your paper and do it again along an edge that doesn't already have that done. So I've got it at 0 at the edge of the paper, and I make a mark just above 1 inch, and I put the 0 at the bottom edge of the paper or near it and make another mark, and then I rotate my ruler and line up my dots, and then I draw my line in. right? Now, for all of our work, I want you to have this border just like this. Okay, for this border, what it does is it makes the picture a little bit smaller, but it also gives you room to hold your picture without smudging the work. It also gives you a chance to write your name and period down at the bottom when I ask it of you to turn it in to get a grade. Now, you're not going to physically turn this artwork in for this whole quarter. You're not going to turn in actual artwork. You're going to take pictures, and I'll explain that in a different video. The next thing to consider is I want you to erase using the eraser from your packet. I want you to use the white eraser to erase the extra lines that go from the box on the inside that made the border to the outside of the paper. So make it nice and neat and clean. So if you know a way to do it without drawing that little box, you can do that. I could have showed you, but I don't want to put another step in the process. So you erase all of those extra lines that make a little square at each of the four corners, and be careful not to erase your borders. And that paper is now ready to go with your project. Let's talk about your different types of doodle. There are three types of doodle. There's a structured doodle, an unstructured doodle, and a mechanical doodle. Please remember, you may not do a mechanical doodle. A mechanical doodle means you put an object down and you trace it, right? You trace objects. We're not doing that. This is not kindergarten. What you're doing is freehand drawing. So once you're done drawing the border, put your tools away. A structured doodle, I'll just write S-T-R-U-C-T-U-R-E-D. Make sure you've done your reading like the directions say before you start this project. Read about structured and unstructured doodles. A structured doodle means you make a mark somewhere on your paper, and then before you make your next mark, you do some loose planning, some pre-thinking. I kind of like that curve there. It could have been a short dot, it could have been a shape, but I went with this kind of curved line. I'm going to give that curved line a reason to be curving that way. So I'm going to put a shape right there pushing against that line kind of. So now I've got two objects starting to create it, and I thought a little bit before I made my next mark. My next step is to think about where I want to go. I'm going to reinforce that movement of this pushing against that line by repeating that line. If you remember, the definition of a pattern is that it's the repetition of a line, a shape, and maybe color. So by repeating those lines, I'm creating a pattern, and that's what is in the design of a doodle. It's the repetition of one of the elements of art. Whether it's a line or a shape, it's repeating it to create a pattern, and it's pure design. So I'm going to do it again just to kind of reinforce it. I like that. Now, I want to think about pattern inside of this. I could do something that reinforces this, or I could make some other lines that create a pattern. I think I'm going to create a pattern that is the repetition of the shape inside the shape. Notice I'm taking my time to make nice, good-looking shapes, right? So a pattern means it needs to repeat more than once. So I'm going to repeat these lines, but in a different way right here. And I'm going to let them flow around my page a little bit. And then I like circles, so I'm going to put circles at the ends of them. I'm kind of pre-thinking just before I do it. If I'm going to do them there, I think I'm going to put some here too. Make them about the same size here as each other, but a little smaller here than they are here because those lines are smaller. I don't think I want to put them there. I think my next step is I'm going to put another shape here that is reminiscent of that one, but not quite the same shape. And I'm going to bring it this way and stop there and bring it right there. So now I've got overlapping happening. It creates some more visual interest that way. And I'm going to repeat it so it kind of looks like waves going in the distance, rippling outward. I'm going to let them get a little softer and just fade out. All right? So I'm creating a pattern that is structured, and I keep it kind of pulling together. Remember to look at some of the videos that show you how to do something a little bit different than what I'm showing you. Let's look at unstructured. Unstructured means that you don't pre-think. You just let it be more spontaneous, but it still needs to be well done. You can't just scribble. Scribbling like this is not a doodle. It is a scribble. It is not unstructured. It is not structured. It is just a mess of lines. You may not do this. You may not try to create something from this. That is not this project. You are repeating lines and or shapes to create a pattern that is abstract enough to be a doodle. All right? We'll talk about what you could put in there besides unrecognizable shapes. So for unstructured, it can start the same way, just making a mark. And then just adding to it in a way that is more pleasing and interesting, but still well executed. I don't want to see you, just because it's unstructured, making it sloppy. Unstructured doesn't mean messy. It just means that you're not pre-thinking the next step. You're just letting one step guide your next step. And how about if I have patterns inside of patterns? And how about if I skip patterns, right? I'm not pre-thinking it, I'm just letting it kind of flow. And by using the same thing in different places around my picture plane, I create what is called unity. By using similar things in different places, it pulls it all together and makes it look like it's all part of one big whole picture, right? So using the same thing in different places helps to pull it together. That doesn't mean everything has to be the same. All right, so a doodle that is unstructured has more spontaneity to it. You're not really pre-planning, and you're not making a scribble, right? So it's kind of a little looser, but it's still very controlled. So you can also darken in areas with your pencil. You can eventually move to the Sharpie pen. If you like, instead of using pencil, you could use color pencils to color in your patterns. There are lots of things you can do. One thing I want you to know is you need to fill up this whole space, right? Make it an interesting doodle using the whole space. Repeat your pattern or your shape, your line, repeating it often enough and throughout helps to create that visual interest that pulls it together. So I'm not just dividing it, I'm going to add more in this space and more in this space using one of these two types of doodles, structured or unstructured, filling in that space. Remember, this is a 30-point project. It'll take you all of the class period. Today was day 1. Day 2 is going to be on Monday or Tuesday next week, and day 3 will be asynchronous day where you're going to wrap it up. And on our Tuesday or on Monday or Tuesday, our second day in class, I'll tell you how to label everything and how to take photographs of everything. So you can do all of that on asynchronous Wednesday. Thank you.